Warning. This episode may contain content that is not suitable for children. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to LED Live. This is the show where we use the light of Christ to expose the darkness found in media and our culture today. I'm really excited about the topic we have, but before we get into that, I actually have something for you guys. A little gift, a little thing to get the conversation going. I got some gummies, some candy.
Are they vegan?
Is one of them
They
poison?
are actually.
Awesome.
They are. Wait, but before you eat some, especially you, Scotty, because you you
sweet
made
tooth.
mention that you want to cut back on some sweets. I want you to keep in mind this fact. In the Philippines, a child was traded for just 7 pounds of candy.
Oh, my.
Can you believe that?
It's crazy.
Wow.
In the Philippines, it's illegal to get married under the age of 18, but in the more remote areas, this still happens, like under the radar. So this dowry for this child to get married was just 7 pounds of candy. Like, this is a real thing, and this is
That's
happening
so crazy.
worldwide, including the United States.
Wow.
And so it is for that reason that I'm thrilled to have Tom Evans here with us. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Tom is the CEO of Child Impact International. And so he's here to really give us a reality check, so to speak, about child exploitation and to provide tips as to how we can really fulfill our calling as Christians to protect the least of these. So thank you again, Tom, for accepting the invitation. I'm excited for what you have to share.
Yeah. Thank you. It's
Yeah.
good to be here.
So as we get started here, can you tell us what is it exactly that you do and what got you into this? What got you started?
Sure. So Child Impact actually started 57 years ago. So a long time ago, before I was born,
Okay.
but really empowering children through education. And so child sponsorship, which we see, we're familiar with that concept of helping a child who can't afford to go to school to be able to do that. So we still are involved with child sponsorship, around 4,500 children that we sponsor right now. But about 10 years ago, we got involved in fighting human trafficking. And our first project was in India. And so as I became involved with Child Impact about 3 years ago, this was a space that I really felt we needed to speak into more and to take more involvement with. And so that's what we've been doing. And so we've now grown that to about 20 projects that directly fight human trafficking.
Wow.
You hear about it a lot in our country. Every time I fly through Atlanta, they always
Yes.
have something blaring on the speaker. If you
True.
see anything, call this number or whatever like that. In terms of worldwide, I know this stuff happens and you often see it in these other countries, but this goes on here in our own.
It does. And, kudos to Atlanta for drawing attention to it. I fly through there all the time as well. And I haven't heard that in other airports, but it's certainly something that they've taken seriously. But in terms of the engagement with the U.S. when it comes to human trafficking, we're 2% of what's done globally. Wow. So about 2 out of every 5 trafficked individuals are in India.
Wow.
So we're only 2% in terms of actual trafficking victims, but we are a major player when it comes to funding human trafficking. So that's where the U.S. has been involved, unfortunately. And so most of the victims are across other borders, but we are involved in other ways.
We're
in
the
terms of funding.
consumers.
Yeah.
Well, you got to wonder if it's proportional, though. The amount of people in India versus the exploitation, and then the United States, we're a smaller population. 2% might be, big in terms of the proportions.
Actually, India just blows us out of the water.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where the big challenge is. And the average price of a slave today is $90.
How much?
$90.
You mean for the entire,
globally.
No, but I mean like you're purchasing them. That's not just
Yeah.
like a one-time use. That's like you own this person
You
for
own the person.
$90.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So, and of course, with drug use, drugs are used up and then people go back and have to get another one. But a girl can be used over and over again, or a boy in some cases. Yeah.
I remember I saw Sound of Freedom recently, and they had mentioned, I think in that one, how many times they were used.
Yeah.
And it's just mind-boggling.
Yeah. So we're working in what's been called the largest brothel in the world in Dalit Dea in Bangladesh. Some say it's ranked number 4 now, but there's 1,600 prostitutes there in that slum, brothel area. And so customers come in every day, multiple customers per woman. The average age of a girl that goes to that brothel is 14 years old. And again, it's a situation where it's legal after 18 or 18 or older, but it's illegal younger. But nevertheless, that's what is happening.
The demand is there.
And so we have a safe house that is nearby there that that's a new project for us.
Wow.
Well, let me ask you this before we get back to how you even got started into this, because this is a lot. Let's lay a foundation when it comes to definitions. When someone says something like human trafficking, child trafficking, is it only in a sexual sense, or how else can it be presented?
Yeah. So in terms of the income from human trafficking, $150 billion business, almost $100 billion of that is the sex trafficking. But, that's the most well-known. But in terms of volume and of types of trafficking, that's a smaller percentage, because labor trafficking, forced child marriage, these are things that are included in that concept of human trafficking. But probably the biggest is that anytime someone under the age of 18 is involved in sex work, it is considered to be human trafficking. So that's the biggest in terms of how the U.S. is engaged with the sex trafficking side of things, because you go to a site like OnlyFans, and that's where, somebody can become their own porn star. And a third of the individuals that are featured there are underage. So that's how America is contributing. One of the major ways America is contributing to human trafficking.
You're saying on OnlyFans, there's adult content being presented by underage people?
Yeah, about a third of
How does that happen legally in America?
It shouldn't be. This was a study done out of England where they looked at who is presenting themselves on this site, and they say 1/3 are underage.
And I mean, there's just probably not the manpower to be able to.
But we just had a show about AI.
I know that's where this
realize
is one of those uses that I think AI is very appropriate in a setting. If it can tell you have melanoma on your skin, right? Can I not tell you your age? Basically, like, hey, this person flagged looks awfully young.
Yeah, I mean, they can put you in Facebook jail or whatever for saying you're mad at gas prices or whatever it is. Like, people get put in there all the time, but yet all this stuff is happening that you could really put that technology to good use for. It's crazy.
And like you said, like, we are big consumers here in the United States. So, I mean, this goes all the way to the tippy top, right? We're talking politicians and people that are actually the ones that can get you in trouble are protecting that system.
Yeah, Epstein's and all that.
Yeah, and we see that globally as well. When our first project started in India 10 years ago, our partner there was knocking down doors of brothels and working with the police to catch the perpetrators. The challenge is when they looked at the registers in these brothels, it was government leaders and police officers that were there. And so, the corruption, kind of allows this to be perpetuated.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge.
Wow. Okay, so you made mention of OnlyFans. That's in the digital world, so to speak. What about instances of like being kidnapped or those things? Is that present at all in? Well, I shouldn't say if it's present at all. We know it is.
Yeah.
But what are the statistics on that in this country versus other places?
Yeah, I would say it's a small percentage of the human trafficking component in the United States. It's you have situations like runaways being approached within 48 hours by a trafficker. So certainly that would be somebody who's taken. But, there's the approach of a Romeo pimp, of somebody who appears to be a romantic partner and then shifts in traffic. So those are more common than somebody just being snatched off the streets. Drug addiction can cause somebody to get into the into the trafficking world.
All right, because
So-
the exchange is there.
Yeah. So those are some of the more common ways. But of course, people do get taken, and we know there's been a disappearance at the border of many children. And so that does happen. We ran into this with the Ukraine crisis, with the war there, especially at the beginning. Things were not monitored well at the borders, and girls and women would be picked up and then delivered they don't know where.
Wow.
And so our partners on the ground were saying that this was a major issue. It got remedied further into things happening, but when immediately there's a rush to leave the country, those are the vulnerable times. And that's why like the southern border is a very vulnerable place for trafficking to happen, because of the situations of people coming over here without a place to stay, not knowing what they're going to be doing, and traffickers step into those vulnerabilities.
Wow.
Well, it's easy to hear all this and just get overwhelmed and unfortunately just stop and like, oh, I don't know what to do. So after hearing all of this information, what actually got you active and involved into this? What is your story and beginning in Child Impact?
Sure. My wife and I have really felt a life calling to do something to help the most vulnerable. When we were dating, my wife said she wanted to have 10 kids. And
sign me up.
Shout out.
yeah, I was like, well, this can't be true.
Yeah.
But she didn't mean that we would biologically have our own 10 children that we gave birth to, but that adoption would be part of our journey. And, maybe I was a little slower than her to come on board with that, but the more you look at it and think about why we're in this world and, we're really placed here to make a difference. It's like, we should be involved in that way. So I have a picture here of one of the two boys that we adopted. These boys were from an orphanage in Latvia. So this is the same boy here. He has an older brother, but I share his photo because he ended up passing away from leukemia. And so as we went on that journey, just the pain that he was going through, knowing that we could be his family, we could be, by his side rather than him in a lone situation.
Right.
He always wanted to give back and wanted to grow up and adopt himself because he'd been adopted. And so what he doesn't know, because he passed away a little over a year ago, is that we have these girls now joining our family.
Wow.
So we are at the tail end of our adoption journey with these two girls. So huge blessing. So that was part of our own journey. So I just have a couple sites up here that I wanted to share for individuals that may have an interest in adopting internationally. There are lots of grants available. We always thought that the finances were a huge barrier. The paperwork's the barrier. If you can do the paperwork, you can get the money. And so I'm a paperwork guru now. So anyway, that's part of the challenge there. But they also have an opportunity to host an orphan for a summer or for Christmas. And so that's how we originally met the two boys. These two girls are from Bulgaria. They have a gypsy background.
Are they related? Or?
There's sisters as far as we know. We get a certain amount of information up front. We really feel like God led us to these two particular girls, and we've had video calls. And anyway, we're excited. In the next couple of months, we're going to go over and have our first in-person connection. Then a few months after that, we get to bring them home. So it's a long journey, but it's a huge blessing. And so I recognize that not everybody can adopt, but everybody can sponsor a child, and give them an opportunity for an education. You change the world for that child. And so that tie between our personal journey and the work of Child Impact is quite significant.
That's wonderful.
Amen.
And I want to commend you because what you're doing at home is matching the initiative that you're a part of. And so when it comes to what you're doing within the ministry, what does that look like internationally, especially because what we're going through here, the stipulations and limitations that are here may or may not be on a global scale internationally. So how does that look like from an organizational standpoint?
So I'd say globally, there's one word, and that's the word poverty. And it's a very different list of vulnerabilities when you look at globally versus domestically. And so this is something that we really feel we need to step into because there are solutions. And so, there's cases that we come across and it's like, we actually can do something. We can actually step into this space and save this child. And so that's very rewarding to know that you can actually make a difference. And so maybe I can share just how some of these vulnerabilities are a little bit different. We found, girls many times will say, can I become a sacrifice so that my family can survive?
And so, that's how they get into the trafficking because they're like, I'll take the brunt hit of it so that you don't have to.
Yeah. So,
so there's got to be salvation for these people. I mean, that's like Jesus right there, right?
Oh, I mean, it's incredible. And it's not something they want to do. So when they're rescued from it, they're very happy to be free from it. They don't want to go back to that. Even though it's, guaranteed income. They don't want that. And how does
their family actually benefit? Is the person who's trafficking this girl now going to send money to their family? I mean, can you even trust that?
Well, the typical situation is that we're engaged with is a truck driver will, this girl's out trying to sell vegetables by the roadway, and a truck driver will approach her and say, look, I'm not interested in the vegetables, but
it's worth this much.
I'll give you $3, I'll give you $5. It's about equivalent to what they'll get. And so they end up sleeping with the truck driver, and they have money then that they can take home to their family.
Okay, so she does it willingly, just because
they're enticed to it because of the money.
Yeah.
Well, and we look at it and say, well, we're so used to options in America, and for many of them, and I could share stories from different countries, it's like they don't see any option in front of them. It's either do this or die.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the kind of thing they're facing. And so they choose to sacrifice themselves. And then you have cases where they're like, there is a wage earner for the family and they're just barely surviving, but something happens to the wage earner. I met a man who pulled down his pants in front of me and showed me scars on his leg where he'd been attacked by a crocodile.
Oh, wow.
So he'd been out fishing to support his family, walked 2 hours to do that. Now he can't walk to fish to support his family. So the daughter ends up trafficked.
Wow.
Or someone has a stroke. It's just, there's so many different things that can happen.
It's so wild when you hear these kind of stories because we're so disconnected from our modern setting. You know what I mean? Like, we're not walking to go get a candy bar or something to eat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like a whole nother world. And then you just kind of understand. You understand when you hear those stories and you go, yeah, of course, anybody would do that in that situation,
Yeah. We have a crazy experience that we came across where we'd rescued a girl. So she was at our school. She was safe from the trafficking scenario, but she was really distressed. And it was because her mom was about ready to be thrown in jail. Why? Her dad had run up a debt. The debt collectors wanted the daughter in exchange for the debt.
Wow.
So the mother refused, the dad took off, and so now the mom is on the hook for the debt.
Oh my.
And so, the mom has no way to pay this. And now they're saying, we don't want only just the one daughter, we want your second daughter as well in payment for this debt. She said, I'm not going to do it. Well, then you get to go to jail. And so we checked out her story, found out she was walking 2 hours to work to braid hair. And we got her a bike. Our partner there presented that to her. And then we found out her debt was $411.
Oh my.
Like,
I know,
so
it's just
easy
nothing
us.
for us.
Yeah. Just destroying her life.
Wow.
Yeah.
So is that an ongoing thing right now, or is it?
Oh, we provided the funds. So now
Praise the
both
Lord.
daughters are in our school. We built a dormitory for 100 rescue girls. This is in Zambia. And, they're paying students want to get in, but that was funded by donors for rescue girls.
I think
Wow.
what we make in a couple of days, their whole life, she'd be in jail. Where's that put her daughters? And
Being marketed by these gentlemen that the debt was owed.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm sure these stories are so many. It's like you feel like you're throwing a pebble into the ocean.
We've had conversations about homelessness on the show before, and the statistic came up that it only takes a couple of months for someone to be on the street for their mental health to significantly decline. So in the cases where it's a child exploitation situation, that may be a little bit more complicated. How much convincing on the side of Child Impact does it take to get this person to leave that world or receive help or go into a different lifestyle that is more safe? Or is
Sure.
it just like a flip switch? Yes, get me out of here, please, please, please.
Yeah. So a parent put it this way to us. They said, our girls used to worry about food and survival. Now they can chase their dreams. And so really, this is not something when you look at the vulnerabilities, the difference in the vulnerabilities, it's clear that if poverty is the main driver and a different option comes, then they're going to step into that. So we have an example from the slums in India. It's called the Vizag slum, where we run a tailoring project for women who are in prostitution. And we also have a preschool there for their children. And so these women, as they register, we get more registrations than we have spaces. And so we run 2 classes a year, run for several months. They've then develop a skill that they can find employment with, or that they can run their own business. But the women are telling us, since we started working in that slum 5 years ago, the prostitution has dropped by 50%.
Oh, wow.
So we want to see that drop to 0.
Yeah.
But when I can meet a child or a young adult there who was sponsored, who did have a sponsor to go to school, and she's a nurse at a nearby hospital, she didn't have to choose prostitution.
Yeah.
And
that's where it feels like a pebble being thrown in the ocean. But actually, when you sit down and you really realize it's just flipping one, it can flip 10, it can flip, and then just exponentially grow from there.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So we have a girl that is in a secret project. We have a couple secret projects that we can't record on video. We can't publish in our magazine. But her parents had passed away. In fact, her mom had been killed by a car bomber.
Wow.
And so kind of a very extreme situation here. Her grandfather started selling her body to make money. And so this girl, her statement was that she wished that someday somebody would switch on the light for her. So that's happened now. She's in a safe house. She's safe. Mm-hmm. She has a bright future. There's a lot of recovery, as you're referring to. There's really the trauma that someone goes through in this experience takes a while to recover from. But we found the first step is to get them in a safe place where they're no longer living with fear.
So there's never any skepticism with you guys? Like, well, how can I trust you? Or, I mean, do you run into that?
We have to follow proper processes. So we work with government officials. We work with social services. There's a girl that we took off the streets in Kigoma, Tanzania. And you could appear like you're a trafficker if this girl just disappears all of a sudden.
Right.
The very thing we're trying to save her from, we could be, perceived as perpetuating. So we went to the local government leader in that area and received a legal signed document that gave us the ability to place her in our school in a safe place. And we're concerned so much that she falls back into that situation that she was in. And this was a girl that was not trafficked as far as we know. She was just in extreme poverty, but men were trying to take advantage of her, and she's being protected by a group of boys.
Wow.
So they're all living out on the streets. So we're saying this is not a place for this girl. And it really, I think, speaks to us that our job, and I speak to men in this, is to protect, not to exploit.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think so many of these girls are exploited by men, and yet our job is the exact opposite. We're called to protect and look out for the vulnerable. And so now she is in a safe place, but her mom is mentally unwell and locks her out of the house at night. And so that's why she's out on the streets. But the mom loves her daughter in her own brokenness, and the daughter misses her mom. So we allow the mom to come visit out on the campus of the school, but we know sending the girl back there puts her in it's not a good situation. People all around the house are drunk. It's just an invitation. She's 12 years old. And we just know that any moment, things will tip for her in the wrong direction. But, this was a case where we saw a situation and we said, we can make a difference for that girl. So it's like that one at a time approach.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It sounds like Child Impact is in the business of creating options so that people can choose better ones. Wonderful. Okay, what other vulnerabilities do you come in face?
We talked about most of those, but how would a fake job offer?
Okay.
What's an example of that?
That is actually the number one tactic used by traffickers globally. So we have a case, this is in Tanzania, girls living along the border. They get to a certain age, and the families, may have many children, have a hard time, supporting all the kids. Once that girl's 12, 13, 14 years old, it's like, you can make it on your own now, which is hard for us to imagine here.
Right.
Yeah.
But she basically has two options at that point. One is to get married as a child bride, and the other one is to accept a job offer. And unfortunately, those job offers, many of them are fake offers as a domestic worker. And so the parents are hopeful that maybe this is, the big city. She can get a job, can send money back maybe to support the family. But most of the times that's a front for human trafficking. And so you look at a country like Tanzania that takes human trafficking seriously, that wants to arrest perpetrators, that wants to send girls that are being trafficked through Tanzania, often down to South Africa, but also through Zanzibar, they're being trafficked to the Middle East and to Europe. They want to stop that. And so they're very proactive in that sense, but it still happens. But if they're able to find a vehicle that's transporting girls, these girls are from other countries a lot of times, they will send them back to the country they came from. But we have a rescue scenario there in country for Tanzanian girls that are at risk for trafficking. And we work with government officials, police officers, and so on to identify who those girls are. And then we bring them into we're building a dorm for those girls now.
That reminds me of a question that I had. You said you work with government officials and police officers and law enforcement, which is fantastic. Has it always been a great experience working with them? Since early in the program, we were talking about the number of politicians that are involved in this exploitation.
I believe we've been blessed with working with the right ones.
Amen.
In Colombia, for example, when our team shows up at one of the projects there, the police are there to escort us, to meet us when we get off the plane. This is the only place where this is happening. So it sounds amazing, but what happened in Colombia is because of the work we're doing with indigenous children who are very much at risk for trafficking, it's garnered the attention of government officials, and even the president of the country is aware of our project and wants to visit. But within a few weeks of starting this project, few months, now close to 100 child abusers have been arrested. Wow, which is phenomenal. Amazing. And so obviously those people aren't happy.
Right.
And so there's they're going to
settle the score.
Yeah. The local police officers are very much vigilant and supportive of the project we have there to make sure that we're safe and our partners are safe.
Wow.
Awesome. I've been sitting here looking at this chain. What is this a visual representation of?
Sure. Do you see one link that's a different color, right?
Yeah.
So there's 100 links on this chain. And this one link represents that only one individual that's trafficked out of 100 will ever escape.
Wow.
So really, the movie Sound of Freedom, and I've got a picture of it right here, but I don't know if you remember the scene where two agents are talking with each other. One was the experienced agent, Tim Ballard, represented there, and the other was somebody new. And he asked Tim Ballard, how effective have you been in your fight against human trafficking? And he mentioned some number over 200 perpetrators that have been arrested. And then the new guy asked, well, but how many children have you actually set free? There was silence. And then he finally said, most of them are across international borders. And that's what really led to the whole story of trying to actually free some children. And, based on a true story out of Colombia, incidentally. And so when I saw that, we're already working in Colombia, and we could really resonate with parts of that story and the scenes depicted there. Yeah. But yeah, it's once, and this is like the Daladea brothel in Bangladesh. The women that run that, if we go in there and we just break in and we take kids out, I mean, we are in a, government, crisis there that's happening by taking that kind of approach. So we have to wisely approach it. And so our partner there talked with the 8 women that run this brothel and said, look, will you give us some of your younger women that, you're trafficking here, 12, 13, 14-year-olds? And their answer was no. Wow. And so, these, 14-year-olds coming in is the average age. And so they're already making a lot of money off of these younger girls, probably more than from the older women that are being trafficked there. And so they did say to us that they would allow us to take their younger siblings. So that gives us the 10, 11, 12-year-olds. But when you think about a girl like that growing up in a brothel, that's where she's headed. Yeah. And so we didn't find that, to get that one out is really challenging, but we can prevent it. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, we have cases where we're able to pull girls directly out of trafficking situations. Mm-hmm. But, knowing that that's where someone's headed and being able to prevent it is the more likely approach.
And are the authorities aware of these 14-year-olds that are part of these? If it's a large brothel and lots of people know about it, I mean, what are they doing about it?
Yes, certainly. And I haven't gone deep enough with that particular project, but yeah, certainly there's awareness, like the Philippines, to know that child marriage is happening in these remote villages, but enforcement is a challenge. And there's such a demand for it as well. And so, you take like FGM, female genital mutilation, in a country like Kenya, it's illegal. And so the age of that happening is driven down to lower and lower ages, trying to prevent detection. And so our partner there will only take girls if there's an actual court case.
Oh, wow.
Because there's abuses on the other side of that to say, hey, we're rescuing from FGM. And it may be a girl just trying to find a place to stay and go to school, and parents kind of taking advantage of that. But when there's an actual court case that's been filed against a perpetrator, that's when our partner says, okay, we can take that girl in. So yeah, there's complications with the work, and we need to make sure these are legitimate cases, that we're actually, when we talk about rescue, it's a real rescue that's happening, because there are a lot of different situations where people are not being honest with the situation.
My family, we took actually a huge family on my wife's side of the family, Christmas vacation to Kajiado, which is over there in Kenya, and it's a lot of the girls that they've rescued from the FJMs, and they were building dorms through Maranatha, and so there are some ways that people can get involved. Not everybody can go on a trip, but you certainly can help fund trips. You certainly can go on a mission trip and work in environments like this that are helping, give resources to being able to pull these people out. And I think it's important. I think we all need to rally together and help these poor kids out. They're beautiful children.
Absolutely. Well, The Sound of Freedom is a movie that like shook this nation, right? Yeah. And there are also like documentaries. The Invisible Hands, I don't know if you've heard of that one, or Stolen Childhoods.
I was 7 or 8 years old when I went to work in people's homes. My parents were poor and did not see the value of educating me. I saw the children go to school and had a hidden wish to go with them. I saw the children being carefree and playing with each other and making noise. I felt that I should be like them and make noise as well.
For 246 million children, life is nothing but work.
For the ones that you've seen, especially since you have personal experience in this work, how accurate are these portrayals? And then to what degree do these films actually accomplish real change in our society when it's talking about people getting involved?
That's a great question. I would say for sure The Sound of Freedom represented a reality that we're aware of and working in Colombia. And so, in Colombia, 200,000 girls a year are abused. 35,000 of those are in commercial sexual exploitation. So in that movie, just over 100 children were rescued. And so, it's again, the chain here with, 1 out of 100. So that's a small number, but you make a world of difference for that child. Yeah. But I think the movies, the one that really grabbed me, I think it was almost verbatim of what we experience in India, is a movie called Sold. And it really shows how girls are enticed from other countries. So many times a country won't traffic their own. So I think about our secret projects. We have 2 of them. And the second one we've opened, they're trafficking girls from the first location that we're at. This is a secret project. Oh, wow. And so we're rescuing from the same country in 2 different countries. Oh, wow. And so super challenging there. But this movie Sold, it's a combination of multiple true stories. So kind of taking a theme of the kind of things that happen with trafficking. And you see a very young girl, parents in poverty, somebody coming that looks like they're a professional saying, look, I can get a job for your girl in India, and giving the parents a sum of money, then showing how they drugged her and, forced her into, being raped really. And, how she ultimately escaped, but just you see so many elements of things we're aware of really happening there. Another really good movie that's based out of the US is one called Priceless. And the music group for King and Country actually are in that movie as actors and actress and so on. And so that one's very well done as well. So again, those give us a picture. What I always say though is most of what these movies do for us is all they do is raise awareness. Mm-hmm. And awareness is only a first step in a change process. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, I get a little frustrated because I look at it and say, oh, there's a lot of people that know about it, they're aware of it, but relatively few who do anything about it. Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so that's the real challenge is how do you go from awareness to action?
I think in our world, we talk about this on our show a lot. I think it's time for all hands on deck. Yeah. I really do think we're in the final stages of Earth's history here. And when you get to heaven, if you're wanting to go there or planning to go there or whatever, right? I think the regret you're going to feel looking back on is, did I do enough?
Yeah.
That's right.
Every single one of us can do something.
Yeah.
Like whether it's with financial or tiny little bits of help or whatever, you know, and it's like not everybody can do the work, but you certainly are working. And, you know, it's like we live in such a luxurious, you know, country that, you know, we spend money like it's nothing. $5 here for a hot drink, $5 here for this or that, right? If you just denied yourself for $5 and everybody were to do that and help, we could funnel some serious help into these organizations.
Including prevention.
Yeah.
You know, and not starting the prevention within the home and then that branching out to the community and then out large. Yeah. But how do you make it practical? What does practical prevention look like? What does getting involved look like for someone who's just like, that was a lot of information. There are a lot of different options. What could I do?
Yeah, I really point to two things. When I share a lot in local churches. You know, I'm happy to take our team. We have people that can preach in local churches and share this, particularly in the afternoon. We'll do an afternoon program as well. So where we talk about what are the vulnerabilities? How can we be aware? But then what's the next step? And so the most practical in America and the simplest one in terms of making a direct impact right away is to not be involved in pornography.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
Because really that's funding. You know, so when you look at a site like OnlyFans with a third underage and the money that goes into this, you know, $99 billion business of sex trafficking. America we're on the hook for that. We're very responsible for our decisions, for our behaviors that fuel the human trafficking that happens globally. So that's a first step. It's a very practical step, either if somebody's personally involved to figure out how to break free from that, or to spread the word to those that, you know, that we may be aware of that are involved in this world and say, look, you're helping to fund human trafficking by these decisions. So that's the first step. The other one is to partner with an organization like Child Impact in our rescue projects. So we call this Operation Child Rescue. We have a special fund that we use for these projects. We have 20 projects. I would say on average, our projects to run over a year cost $50,000 a project. Wow. So that's not a small amount of money. And so, you know, somebody who can give a few dollars a month, but do it on a monthly basis, that adds up when you begin to put a lot of those together. And that's what we're really looking to do. And so we call individuals who partner with us monthly. They're part of the rescue party.
Amen.
And so they're going on these rescue missions with us.
Amen.
And so we give updates monthly to that group, to that rescue party. And that's a way that we can make sure that, you know, we don't want to start a project and then say, oh, now we can't fund it for next year.
Right.
These are girls, boys' lives that are at risk. And so we want to make sure that they can stay in a safe place and they can really have a vision for their life beyond the trauma that they've been through.
Can you imagine meeting these people in heaven and being like, you know, you gave a little bit of money and I'm literally here because if you've given me this money.
Yeah, you canceled your Netflix and your Disney Plus and gave it to this. So much better. I mean.
So I have one, just real quick, this girl in the orange skirt there. I was preaching, my wife's there next to her, but I was preaching, and these are some of the girls in Zambia that have moved into this 100-girl dormitory. But I was approached by the girl in the orange skirt and this group of girls after I preached. And she was very emotional. And she said, I just want to thank Child Impact for changing our lives. And she was in tears.
Wow.
I mean, imagine how I felt about that. Yeah. And then she said, we've had really tough lives.
Wow.
And it was like, whoa, that is super powerful, because all those girls standing right there, their lives have been completely changed.
Wow. Wow. You know, I wonder if you literally could swap lives with somebody like this, what would that do for you? If you actually could just say, okay, you are now going to live this person's life for a month.
Complete priority change.
You'd be like, I am never buying Starbucks again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you would, exactly. You'd be like, I'm using all the extra resources that I waste on my own frivolness.
I've often done that very thing. I'm driving down the road in one of these countries, and I'm like, what if I switch with that person right now? What would my life be like? That person riding the bike right now or walking along the street, what would be different? Yeah. And the reality is everything would be different, right? Yeah.
How can parents talk to their kids about this? Or how can a family provide a safe environment for their community or their church family, seeing that this can happen at a drop of a hat, this type of exploitation?
Yeah, I look at it and say, in America, probably we are more vulnerable to child abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it's not the same. But the stats are staggering. 1 in 4 girls before age 18, 1 in 5 boys are abused, and usually it's by a family member. And so certainly I think that's something that is somewhat related, but something that we have as a greater vulnerability here. I do find that parents here in the States want their kids to have some level of awareness. I do my best to kind of do a PG-13 version when I share with families, because we do have young children that are in the audience when I share. But I've also found that parents have appreciated their kids knowing that, this is a broken world, and not everybody is safe and can be trusted. But I think where we really let our guard down and where we've really messed up, I think even sometimes as a church community, is our sympathies go to the perpetrator who claims that they're sorry, who claims it'll never happen again. And most perpetrators have multiple victims, and 20% of perpetrators have between 10 and 40 victims.
Oh, wow.
And so we need to really be vigilant, whether it's with human trafficking or whether it's with child abuse. We have a responsibility. And, I think of Revelation 18:13, where it talks about all these items that the merchants of the earth purchase. And it ends by saying that they purchase the bodies and souls of men.
Wow.
And so that's the reality of the world that we live in. And so, my wife would always, when our kids were young and they would go to use the restroom, she would have her foot with the door open to say, are you okay? Everything okay in there?
Yeah.
And I think as parents, we need to have that both from a trafficking perspective, but, probably primarily from a child abuse perspective, that we need to be really making sure our kids are safe and that they know how to find safety if they're in a compromised situation.
Amen.
Excellent.
We also work with baby rescue. A baby's the most vulnerable of any human being.
Absolutely.
And so they get abandoned for different reasons. This boy was born to a child bride who died in childbirth. That's a high risk of child marriage.
Wow.
But the baby survived. Wow.
Baby survived, and it's a risk to the mom and to the child. I mean,
Because they're just too young? Or,
it's just that, a young mom doesn't necessarily have all the skills to take care of this baby. And the baby, it's
And
just
young, we're talking 13,
you have
12.
13, 15,
Okay.
Wow.
years of age. And so the father, because he was superstitious, felt that this boy was bad luck. So he left him laying in a hut by the body of his deceased mom.
Wow.
And so one of our teachers found out about that, and she was an orphan herself, raised in the home of missionaries. And so she's adopted him, and she didn't have the funds to do that. So Child Impact helped her with that adoption process. Here's another boy that we rescued. That he was abandoned outside of a home this is in Tanzania. This lady heard him crying outside of her home there, took him to the hospital, got a hold of social services, and he was taken to one of our projects. So this is him 8 months later.
So sweet.
So you can tell, he's flourishing, healthy baby. And so we've even, before I started with Child Impact and before we partner with this particular project, they had a baby that was buried alive in a graveyard, and a shepherd found him.
Oh my.
And so, but they're in a region where there's a lot of prostitution because of tourism. And so a prostitute will get pregnant, and 9 months later you see abandoned babies in toilets, outhouse toilets, in the market, beside the road.
Wow.
Or a mom dies in childbirth,
Wow.
and you've got these abandoned babies. So right now, this particular project has over 30 babies,
Wow.
in addition to the children that we work with there. So we're the primary support financially for that project.
Wow. What do you do with the babies, by the way? I mean, do you send them into adoption programs, or
It
where do they
depends
go?
on the project. In this particular project, they will likely be raised there. They have a family setting. They have 8 homes in a circle, and all those homes have what they call mamas. And so these babies grow up with women that they know and trust in a safe place.
Kind of like a daycare or nursery.
Well, it's their home.
Yeah.
That's where they live. And so the goal is that at some point they'll grow up and be independent and be able to carry on with their own lives. We have a girl there that is part of our sponsorship program who tested the very top in the whole country of Tanzania 3 years in a row.
Wow.
Wow.
And she's part of a group of abandoned siblings.
Wow.
And so these kids have huge potential
Right.
if they're given the opportunity.
Right. Right.
This may be a difficult question to answer. there are situations where there are organizations that start off amazing. They do so much good, but unfortunately, the people that work within them actually fall prey to the thing that they're trying to prevent. And we even see right now with Project Underground Railroad, I believe there's some corruption happening there. So when people, they have finances that they want to pour into organizations, how can they vet these organizations and
trust them?
Trust them. And well, this is a twofold question. So it's them. How do people vet organizations, but also people who are involved? How do you protect yourself against so much darkness and evil, and for it not to infiltrate your own mind and mess with that?
Great questions. There are a couple of organizations that evaluate nonprofits. So Charity Navigator, GuideStar, you can go to those places and you can see what percentage of funds actually go to the projects. Do they have good accounting practices, all these kind of things. So we're always happy at Child Impact to answer those questions. And, we have an incredible board of directors that ultimately oversees everything we do. We're audited, all those things. You have to do business well as you're doing ministry.
Absolutely.
And so super important because, with any of us, trust can be lost in a moment and it's hard to regain. And so we want to make sure that we're above board and trustworthy in everything that we do. And we've said no to projects that don't line up. I went to one country and almost everything the person told me was not true.
Wow.
And there are organizations that don't even visit their projects. And don't vet them. There's a cost to doing that. But we feel like there's a responsibility and accountability with donor dollars that we're making sure that they go to the intended place. Excellent. And that they're being used properly. So that's not free to do. We had a donor one time wanted to bypass Child Impact and just give directly to the project. A year later, they came back and said, by the way, can we send our funds through you because we like how you do things?
Wow.
So there's a cost to it. We keep it to as low a percentage as possible because we want to help the kids with everything we can.
I think that's super important. And I think there's probably a lot of people out there that have this kind of mindset as well. It actually has prevented me in the past of supporting children in, get a sponsor and stuff like this, because I've heard these horror stories of what they do with the money, like 10 cents out of every $20 makes it to the kid.
Yeah.
And so I actually would love it if we could put the link down there to some of these ways that people could trust and pick through that. I think that's very important.
So if you sponsor an impoverished child or vulnerable child through Child Impact, 85% of what you give will go to support that child.
That's beautiful.
So, I wish 100% could go, but the reality is the world we live in, there has to be the accountability process. Sure. And, we travel to share the stories to, people give based on knowing that it's changing lives. Yeah. And so that's a story we need to share. And so, but I always get the most economical ticket I can get and plan ahead. And we stay with our projects. They feed us at our projects. So there's things you can do. You don't have to live a high lifestyle when you're going to do these things. You can be humble in the way that you approach things,
right?
And go about ministry. So, we're in a rented space with Child Impact. It's on the campus of Southern Adventist University, which is great.
Beautiful.
Because we can get student volunteers, we can get student workers that are come at a lower price, and we can get student interns that are required to put a certain amount of hours in. So we have cost savings even by being on the campus there. And so these are things that we have to weigh and look at in terms of how we manage. But you asked a second question, how does a person protect themselves? When I was a young boy, there were some friends up in a tree that wanted me to come up and look at pornography. And I said no. And, from that point in my life, I realized that, we can exploit women, girls in ways that demeans them as a human being. And I did not want to be a part of that. And yet we know as men that we're drawn to these images. And so we have to stay away from things that tap into that side of our carnality, right? And so that's a purposeful decision that we have to make. And I've really always leaned heavily on a verse that says, be careful when you think you stand lest you fall. None of us should be thinking that we're above temptation or we're above that vulnerability. And so I try to always travel with other people from my team. I take my wife with me whenever I can. And I don't need to watch or view the things to know the evil that's there.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, we need to stay clear of that, because I think it's something that can easily suck a person in to where they get trapped by it. And the very thing you're trying to save people from, you can become consumed by yourself.
Yeah.
And so that's a vigilance that all of us need to have in our own lives. And it's a constant battle that we need to be aware of and make sure that we're not only holding ourselves accountable, but allowing other people to hold us accountable too.
So did you give those boys up in the tree a Bible lesson? Like, let me tell you about another tree where somebody tried to entice them into this Genesis.
Wow.
Well, no, it's certainly a challenge in the world that we live in, isn't it? And we know it's rampant.
Prevalent,
it's everywhere.
yeah.
It's everywhere.
And I think that technology has really fed into all of that because, when we were kids, there's a level of embarrassment. You got to climb up into the tree. You have to like somehow get a hold of a magazine. This stuff comes to everybody's phone now. I mean, kids can look at it with such ease today. It's really mind-boggling.
And they don't even have to look for it. It pops up as a
That's right.
suggestion.
You don't even have to seek it. Yeah, it's
Right.
accidentally being put in front of you, or not accidentally.
Well, and 1 out of 5 children that are on the internet will be approached by somebody who is wanting to engage with them sexually.
Just social media.
So that's just 1 in 5 kids are going to be wherever they're going. They're gonna come across stuff that entices them that way.
You want to see a documentary that will really freak you out about what's on the internet? Childhood 2.0. I think you can watch it on YouTube.
Yeah.
I had a question.
Okay.
You said that you're on the campus and you have some volunteer jobs. What would that look like if a student says, I want to help? What are they going to do with you?
Yeah. So because there's a certain level of training that's involved, we tend to take volunteers that are consistent and can come in every week. There are occasions where we'll have somebody come in and, stuff envelopes, put addresses on, some of these kind of things. So some of the basic work that way. But we do have roles where we have regular volunteers that come in and will work 4 hours a week or 6 hours a week with Child Impact. And there's a training that we go through for that because we have a database that they'll need to access to do some data entry kind of things for us. And we have profiles that we print of children that we take to our events and to help us prepare for events. So we have a student intern this summer that's working with us full time.
Awesome.
Every hour we're open, he's there, and he's out preaching on the weekends as well.
Wow.
And so he's getting a great internship, and it's a huge blessing to us.
Yeah.
And so,
Now you have a big date coming up here pretty soon.
Yes.
What is this date, and how can people get involved and help you even in this rush hour?
Yes. So July 30 is the World Day Against Human Trafficking. And so it's a big day where awareness is raised. And of course, we hope to share ways where that awareness can move into action.
Right.
And so we have a big event every year in this local area, in the Chattanooga Collegedale area that we run. We happen to be tying it to our open house. So July 27, I'll be preaching at a church, Collegedale Community Church. And that Saturday evening, we have a program where we talk about our projects, including we'll go off camera and talk about our secret projects. So that's at 5:00 on the 27th of July. And then on the 28th from 10 to 4, we're doing a Child Impact open house on the campus of Southern. Right as you drive into Southern's campus, we're right on the left-hand side there in the Fleming Plaza. So that's local. But we're producing a video related to our project for this year, which is to build a safe house in the Philippines for kids that are in the highlands that are vulnerable to child marriage, so they can come down into the lowlands and have a place to stay to pursue their studies.
Man.
So this is what the girls want. They get trapped from pressure from their family or from the boy to get married at a young age. But I've met with these girls and they want to pursue their education. They have dreams for their lives. And so we have 14 acres of land that we've secured, and now we're going to build out some infrastructure there. So that's what we're raising funds for the July 30 focus this year. And so this is the first video in a series about that. Palawan has been ranked the #1 island in the world. Yet here on this magnificent island, there's some inequities that are taking place, and many of their customs are still carried on, including child marriage and child brides.
There is a culture here in the mountains where their parents are the ones making the decision for them.
We should already be married at around 12 years old.
It's almost a forced marriage.
It's like they see and think that this is all I am.
I lost hope of being able to continue my studies.
There's like a sparkle gone out of their eyes.
That happens all the time. and it's heartbreaking. But to see these kids getting their certificate that they're proceeding to the next level, and for them to gain their dignity back, it's such a wonderful gift.
If our audience would like to learn more about Child Impact or donate to the ministry, like how can they stay informed about what you're doing and keep up to date?
Awesome. So we have a magazine that we send out once every 5 a year. So 5 copies a year. This is also available online. It just has some amazing news. It so happens that our photographer has been featured by National Geographic, Jasper Turiaga.
Cool, yeah. I love
so
Jasper.
Yeah, he's amazing. So he's full-time with Child Impact. He travels with me all the time. But just amazing magazine, great photos, great stories. And so that's available on our website as well. We send out a Friday field report. So anybody that provides their email to us, we send out a Friday update every week. For those that participate with our Operation Child Rescue as part of the rescue party, there's a special monthly Operation Child Rescue report about our rescue projects. So these are ways to stay aware, to take action. You can do that on our website, childimpact.org. And in this context, select Operation Child Rescue and become either a one-time or monthly donor for that. Also would love for you to stop by in our office. We love to give tours and,
That'd be awesome.
and share our stories.
Cool. I want to come to your event.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
For sure. Me too. You know, I was reading Mark chapter 10, and in there, Jesus himself, he says that the kingdom of God belongs to who?
The children.
Yes, little children. And so that's one of the reasons I believe that the devil is working so hard to cause harm to little children. Through whether it is through exploitation or through ideologies that we're seeing rise up in this country, worldwide, really, or wiping them out completely, which is the most heart-wrenching thing that can happen. As Christ's ambassadors, it is our duty to protect children the best way we know how, through the help of Jesus Christ. And so, Tom, I want to thank you so much for opening our eyes to what's happening out there, but also giving us tips on how to practically get involved. I just want to encourage our viewing audience. The Lord does encourage us to take action. It's always good to have the biblical knowledge, but it's not until we actually implement that knowledge that we're living out our Christianity. And so I want to thank you so much for watching. I hope you were blessed. I hope, the ideas are flowing through your mind and that you're actually going to put them into action. If you're new here, please subscribe. And, a free way to help out this ministry, Little Light Studios, is to leave a like and to share it with a friend. So we ask that you do that. For those who would like to help us financially, there are links in the description for where you can donate to us, or you can check out our lightwear designs. I'm actually wearing a t-shirt now, so is Scotty. And there are so many other designs on there, not just in t-shirt form, but in stickers if you want to throw it on a laptop or on a water bottle. We have free wallpapers as well on our website, littlelightstudios.tv. So all of that is available for you all to check out. We've been posting podcast episodes on YouTube, but if you don't want to wait week after week for those episodes, you can check out the Little Light Studios podcast on all podcasting platforms. Season 1 is fully out there, and we're rolling out season 2 actually as we speak right now. So you can go and check that out if you're interested. We just want to thank you so much again for watching, and we hope you have a blessed day. We'll see you next time on LED. Bye-bye.
Jacob, and he who formed you, Israel. I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go out no more. I will write on him the name of my God. Be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. The Lord shall renew your strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not by prayer alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God.
Do you have questions about the Bible that you've been struggling to find the answers for? Video Bible Study, or VBS for short, is a YouTube channel that answers your Bible questions in 5 minutes or less. Check out these easy to understand, comprehensive videos talking about everything from what happens when you die to why does God allow suffering. Make it your goal to deepen your relationship with Christ this year and subscribe to Video Bible Study on YouTube to help you along your journey.
I'm sorry, do we know each other? It seems like maybe we've met before. I don't know. This is, it's awkward though, just as much for me as it is for you. I really wish I had a conversation starter. Oh, hey. Oh, what's on my shirt? Yeah, this is the story of the three angels message from Revelation 14. Wow, that totally worked. You know, if you have trouble starting conversations like me, maybe you should try Lightwear.